Hello everyone, this is Ray Savage with Cambium Networks. Thanks for joining us today for this webinar on the PTP 820, our licensed microwave solution. Joining us today is Dave Hensley, who is our RF planning systems engineer for PTP 820. And there is really nobody more experienced at working with these solutions. So we're very glad to have him here with us. The webinar is being recorded, and we will post the recording to the online community sometime later today. But during the course of the presentation, if you do have any questions, please feel free to use the question and answer dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll get to those during the course of the presentation. And of course, afterwards, we'll post the presentation and the recording to the community. And if any other questions come up, you can certainly go ahead and post those there, and we'll be glad to answer them. Well, without any further ado, Dave, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Ray. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I want to also put in a plug for the forum. I am on the forum, and I answer questions on the PTP 820. And if I can't answer them, I find somebody who can. So welcome. So this webinar is exclusively about release 9.2. Woohoo! You can find it at that URL. That happens to be their support pages. The products are organized by part number. So you got to scroll down a little bit until you get to PTP 820 if you don't use that hard link. Now, what are you going to find there? You're going to find it's overwhelming. So don't be frightened. You're going to find the software, the firmware, the release notes, user guides, install guides, and I get a kick out of this. Look at this. We have a quick install guide, we have a quick start guide, and we have an assured installation guide. Why do we have 3 installation guides? I have no idea. The smallest one is the quick start, and that's if you know what you're doing and you just, you need a little reminder. If you want something a little beefier, you go with a quick install. And if you need even more, you go to the assured install. In my opinion, the best place to go is the user guide. That's where all the details are on configuration parameters and how to actually operate these radios. The technical descriptions are good as well. Those give you an overview of how the features work. But if you actually want to know how to configure them, you've got to go into the user guides. I want to mention something here, release notes. You might say, oh man, why do I have to read the release notes? It's usually just a bunch of legalese and boilerplate. No, you need to read the release notes. The release notes will tell you what new features are available. In fact, this entire presentation came from the 9.2 release notes. That's how important the release notes are. The release notes will tell you how to upgrade the software. Do you have to go through a certain version before you upgrade to 9.2, for example? So if you're running an old release like 7.9, you will have to go through at least one software version because of a database change before you get to 9.2. It'll tell you any limitations that you need to know about. Crucial, important. Please read the release notes. I think we're almost 100 pages in our release notes. Does it apply? Does everything in the release notes apply to you? No. If you're not a T1 user, you can skip the TDM section of the G release notes, for example. So not everything applies to you, but you can find some very useful information. Typically, you'll have specific questions about your install, and more often than not, you go to the release notes and you will find it there. Now, on the forum, when people ask questions, what do I do to answer those questions? Well, I've downloaded all of these documents onto my laptop. The first place I go is release notes, technical descriptions, and user guides. So a little bit of information, if you're a little shy about checking out the forum, well, go ahead. We've got probably more, we've probably got more than 1,000 pages of information here. Search through it. They're PDF files. They're easily searchable. I usually go through there, and more often than not, I will find the answer there. So just a little pointer there. So here is a list of new features that are available in 9.2. The first thing we're going to talk about is the user interface enhancements, and then there's a bunch of other relatively minor improvements, but depending upon which product you're using and how you're using that product could be very important to your application. First thing is the user interface enhancements. Prior to 9.2, if you wanted to find out the state or condition or wellness or well-being of your link, you had to go to several different pages. You'd have to hit radio parameters, you'd have to hit MRMC status, you might have to go to a couple of other places. What we've done here is put everything that we think you would need into one place. And I am showing you an actual screenshot from a link that's been running 9.2 for several weeks now. It's down in the Galveston, Texas area. It survived the hurricane. Didn't stay up during the hurricane, but it came back up after the hurricane had passed. This is an example. Now, it's a bit of an eye chart, so what I've attempted to do in the next slide is show you what it looks like. That's actually what the page looks like when you first log in. And so it's the first thing that's presented to you when you log in. And then that's still an eye chart. So the next page, the third and final page on this particular slide is, this is as big as I can make it so that it's readable. So what's on this page? Well, you've got a bunch of unit parameters that will tell you, for example, how long the link has been up, part numbers, voltage, unit temperature, what software version you're running, date and time. Where else would you want to look? Well, if you go down to the bottom, you can see the received level, the modem mean squared error to tell you whether or not you've got any errors, defective blocks here, so you can tell this link is having a couple of issues. It's got some defective blocks there. It will tell you what kind of setup you've got. You can tell from this slide here that this is a G, and it's a 1+1 protected link. It's also space diverse. It has spatial diversity. You can tell what the transmit power is set to, your transmit and receive modulation modes. It's even got transmit and receive frequency pair. And let's see, what else? Oh, it's got serial numbers. Now, that's a lot of information. So what if you just want to see certain parts of information? Well, this thing is customizable. On the next slide, I'm showing what I thought might be important for this particular link. For example, it's not an XPIC link, so I don't care about the XPIC status. It's not using link aggregation groups, so I've taken that off as well. I don't want to see that. How do I customize this to make it, to kind of make it more meaningful, more useful? If we go on to the next slide, you can see that those little triangles, the inverted triangles, allow you to turn on and off an entire subsection. They also, when you hover over them and left click on them, they will allow you to select the various aspects of things you want to look at. So you can see here, I've clicked on link status, and I've unselected lag and XPIC, and I also don't care until much later in the presentation. I don't care about IPv6, so I've deselected that. And that's how I got that particular display. So it's very powerful, very useful. Now, when you first log in, you get a summary of the link. Very powerful. You don't. No longer do you have to just look at or look at several pages to figure out the status of your link. Another new feature is alarm statistics. So for each one of the alarms that your unit has generated, you get the number of current alarms per severity level for each interface. And it just gives you a list, and then if you click on that, you can get more information about the alarms. So it's kind of providing you another avenue, another picture into your alarms. I mean, you can look at your current alarms. That's useful, certainly. You can look at your event log, but if you wanted to get the alarm statistics information, you'd have to scroll through the entire event log and compile all this information. Well, this does it for you. So that's what that feature is all about. The next new thing we've got is quick platform setup. This is different from the quick config, and really what it's designed to do is centralize all of these configuration parameters, because we realize, hey, wait a minute, the quick config is useful, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. This allows you to centralize a bunch of configuration parameters so that, again, you don't have to go to a bunch of different pages to configure a link. You can go to this page here, configure the platform, and then go into your quick config and set up the link. So it's really going to speed up the process. The things that you might want to change here include your IP address, subnet mask, default gateway. If you're using network time protocol, you could put it in here, and then you can also put in activation keys as well. So on the next slide, I'm showing you the quick config, and you guys should be familiar with that already. That was released a couple of releases ago. This, combined with the quick platform, will enable you to set up links quicker than ever before. This is really going to speed up your installation process. Remember that the quick config is something that you would do right out of the box. So once you've run quick config, once you've run the quick platform, you're not going to run it again. You're going to run it right out of the box. Next new feature actually has two new features. One of them is lag override, and the other is MCABC, minimum bandwidth override. So before I tell you the gory details of these two features, let me explain some things. When you are trying to combine traffic on two different links, you can use what's called link aggregation group. You can tie the two links together, and that allows you to combine your traffic onto one single interface. This is not a new technique. Lag was actually developed for wired networks before it was developed for wireless networks. There are some, if you're brand new to link aggregation, there are some quirks that you need to understand. If you're setting up link aggregation for the first time, you should definitely research, learn more about how link aggregation works, because different manufacturers implement their lags differently. And another thing you need to realize is that when you put two links onto a single interface, you need to be aware of the capability of that single interface. So sometimes, since our PTP 820 is incredibly fast, incredibly high throughput, it's possible that you could have two links that carry, upwards of 600 megabits per second. Now, if I were to combine those two with a link aggregation, I could get 1.2 gig, right? Well, yes, but remember, the radio has gigabit Ethernet interfaces, so the maximum I could get would be actually just a little bit less than 1 gigabit per second. There are several different approaches to link aggregation group that we can use with the 820. The 820 out of the box with no license keys whatsoever supports link aggregation group. So you can combine two wireless links without paying a license activation fee or anything like that, and you can do it internally. That's what we call internal lag. You can also do it externally, so you can put switches at either end of your two links and use the capabilities of those switches to do your link aggregation group. And that's actually how you would get greater than 1 gigabit per second, because your switches would likely have a 10 gigabit per second interface. All right, so that's link aggregation group. The next feature on here is called multi-carrier adaptive bandwidth control. That's MCABC. Now, we realize that link aggregation group has some drawbacks, and if you want to know more, just go read up on link aggregation group. You'll start reading. You'll say, okay, there are some limitations. MCABC attempts to combine traffic on two different links at layer 1 instead of layer 2 or above. It's very efficient, and it works quite well, and it also allows you to combine two interfaces or two links onto a single interface. And it's incredibly powerful. It's very efficient. It's much more efficient than link aggregation group. So now that I've given you an overview of link aggregation group and MCABC, you may have a network where you need to carry certain amounts of traffic, and you may have a complex network where, if certain links are experiencing, let's say, RF difficulties, fading, or something like that, and their throughput starts to drop, you may want to have your switches or routers change traffic patterns and change the direction where certain traffic is routed or carried. And so what you would do is implement this. If you're using lag, you would implement this lag override. If you're using MCABC, you could use the MCABC override. And all it does is you set a threshold, and when the traffic falls below that threshold in megabits per second, when it falls below that threshold, it will shut down the group, and that will communicate to your external networking devices, hey, there's a problem on this link. I need to change something. And that's the summary of these two features. Woohoo! The next feature that we have in 9.2 is called Enhanced Lag Distribution. So, a little bit more about link aggregation. There are many, many ways that you can implement link aggregation. If you are, let's pretend you're a switch. If you're a switch and you're receiving traffic, as a link aggregator, what do you have to do? Well, you've got to look at your incoming traffic and figure out, hey, which link do I put this traffic on? You can't just put it onto one link and let the other link go idle. That's not an efficient use of your resources. And so ideally, you would want to distribute the traffic evenly. And it is very hard to do this because you don't know anything about the traffic. You may receive one stream of very large packets, and you may have no other choice but to just round robin distribute those packets between your two interfaces. Well, then you may get another stream of very small packets. Well, how do you distribute those in there? Well, there's what's called a distribution function, and that determines how you are distributing the traffic amongst these two links. And we have 10 different predefined lag distribution schemes. There's not a lot of detail in here, so how do you use this? You go in this page here and you choose a distribution function and you see how well it works. You measure the performance before and after. And it will provide you some suggestions. You'll see this transmit byte count, and you can see how the traffic is being distributed. And you can pick one that you like. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility. Notice that this feature is only available for lag groups that have exactly two interfaces. The next thing that we've introduced in 9.2 is a received signal level threshold alarm. So why would you want this? So your link in a sunny day operation is typically deployed well above the receiver sensitivity. So on a sunny day operation, things are golden. But what happens? Well, bad stuff happens in the channel, like fading or ducting or rain fading, even worse. And what will happen is the received signal level will start to drop. And what you want to know is when that drop occurs. And you can set this alarm to go off at a certain level. Now, by default, we've disabled this, and we keep the threshold at -68, which is actually pretty low. You might want to go a little bit higher in your network and enable it. But it just gives you another way to proactively manage your network and allow you to do preventative maintenance instead of maintaining it after the link has gone down. If you need more information, you should, of course, see the user guide. The last thing we're going to talk about today is called mate management access, or IP forwarding for IPv6. Remember I told you earlier I didn't want to see IPv6? Well, now I do want to see IPv6. So what is this? this enables you to do in-band management when you have two 820C units that are configured as, say, 4x4 MIMO, or a protected 2+0 link, which is 2+2, or a 4+0 with MC-ABC. You've got an external switch generating traffic, and you want to manage it inbound using IPv6. So this is a pretty narrow subcategory. It's a pretty, I don't imagine this feature will be used that often, but if you need it, it's definitely here. This allows you to have in-band management when you're using that particular configuration. And again, it only applies to the 820C. And with that, I believe that's my last slide. Do we have any questions, Ray?
No, we don't have any that are online right now. I'm sure it's going to take people a little bit of time to kind of absorb this, get used to the PTP 820, and take a look at it. And I know you're very active on the community, so as questions may arise, please feel free to post them on the community, and we'll get to them there. Thanks, everybody.